Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Extra Shift. I'm Chris here, as always, with Brendan. How are we going?
Good. Wow, it's getting real close to hockey season. Like I honestly I don't watch that much preseason hockey because I don't want
Because
to
why
become
bother?
biased. Yeah, well, I mean partially, but like I also don't want to be biased by it because like weird shit happens in like the first few preseason games where like it'll be like a bunch of AHL and minor league kind of players playing against each other, and some player will lead the preseason with like 17 points, and then 2 weeks into the season they'll be in the AHL and you'll have never heard of them ever again. So like I waited until about like halfway through at least before I actually start bothering to watch games, especially for my team, because I think today is like the first day that the Penguins have actually put like anyone vaguely towards the top of the lineup in an actual team. But I did watch today's game, and it was nice to actually see Crosby and Malkin and all those kind of guys actually like bothering to play again, even if they weren't 100%. So look, it's nice. It's getting real close to hockey season again, where we're literally like 5 days off from the Czech games that they're
Well,
playing.
well, it's why we suddenly, we were thinking about the other day, going, we should do the predictions next up. And I still forgot. I thought we had a couple of weeks originally. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
mean
like, oh, crap. That's right.
well, there's those 2 games, and then there's like 3 days off before actually, like technically it's like Tuesday next week is
Don't
the
remind
like
me, last year they crushed me in fantasy
yeah
because I had so many Leafs in my team
yeah
and they didn't play for 3 weeks. It
yeah.
sucked.
It's gonna be weird, like for those first couple of games, it's gonna be great to like for fantasy to have like Buffalo players and stuff, and they'll be like, yeah, load up on all these guys, and then they won't play for ages until they get sent back.
Exactly. So we are at episode 214, and as you might have noticed, for those watching, merchandise. Yay! We
Yes,
have
yeah, we've
hoodies.
got we're
We have
matching.
hoodies. They're quite warm, which is great, just in time for summer.
Yeah,
So just
that's
in time
right.
for summer.
Perfect timing.
Well, we figured about time. So episode 214. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different 14s. I mean, look, we're all here for the Sillaps. Nod. Why not? Go Sill. I mean, we've been through this a lot. There are obviously a number of very well known 14s. San Jose Sharks legend Jonathan Chichu. I always pick
There's some
ones.
wild Hall of Famer names in this batch though, like Woody Dumart, Fern Flaman, which is apparently a real guy. Who's
Vern
in the Hall of
Flaman's
Fame.
great.
Yeah, like it was this deep, Craig Patrick and Dick Keon and kind of guys like that, but like
Ike
Thomas
Hildebrand.
Buchanan.
Ike
Yeah,
Hildebrand. Ike
yeah,
Hildebrand sounds like the sort of guy you'd take your Chrysler to when you need it fixed.
yeah.
I've got a Chrysler that needs fixing. Ike Hildebrand.
the the one that stands out for me is Thomas Volkanich at the moment, because like everyone locally now has to wear those neck guards. So
Yep.
like everyone, I feel like Thomas Volkanich every time now, like having like the turtleneck, neck guard on, just my personal touch point for neck guards.
I mean, the other really interesting one for me is, if you go down the list, is Don Maloney.
Mm.
Noted 14, Don Maloney. So, like you've got great Greg McKegg. Greg McKegg had every
Greg
number.
McKegg.
Is there a number that Greg McKegg has not had?
I'm
He
not
seems
sure.
to pop up every time we do one of these.
He's played for about 14 teams, I think.
Yeah, but every time we do one of these, one of them is Greg McKegg.
Yeah.
He just seems to have had every number in the league. Now, obviously, we're back to trivia again this week. And we're back to trivia. And again, I look up the trivia and Brendan has no idea what it is. Now, rather than going 214, I just went 14 this time. So the most shorthanded goals in playoffs over a career, so not one, over the whole of a career, is 14 shorthanded goals. Who holds that record?
Oh, all right. So I'm going to imagine it's probably not someone currently playing, because I don't know that anyone has like that level of like proliferation of playoff.
Sportsnet wouldn't be able to shut up about it.
Yeah, like it's
you
not
want
going
him
to
in
be
the playoffs. He scores shorties.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something, I know that there are some kind of recent, shorthanded, especially, oh, yeah, no, it's not going to be like,
think
or someone like that. But it's got to be someone has had like a lot of playoff appearances. So it's going to be probably someone from one of those, storied franchises like the Islanders or the Habs or the Rangers or something that had like a lot of appearances.
Okay. Do you want a clue?
Yeah, sure.
Your clue for this episode is that it's actually quite episode appropriate when we get to awards.
Oh, is it Messier?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that we don't predict.
Yeah,
the Hooters Mark Like Award.
Oh, okay. That makes sense because he had all of those playoff. He went from like one playoff team to another player. He was the ringer in for like playoff performers. Like,
in that Rangers year, he had a ton.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I thought about it, and my thought process was very much around the idea of, well, we're not doing the Messier Award.
Yeah,
but we can squeeze Mark into this episode still because, like, there is look. Let's just like we do predict all of the awards. We don't predict the Messier Award because it's literally the Hooters Mark like this year.
Yeah, no, it's
like
ridiculous.
Hooters Mark think is a bro.
And he's not even the guy who, like, of all of those guys that I would want an award named after. Like, there's no Gretzky Award, there's no Lemieux Award or whatever, but there's a Messier Award.
But what I love, and we're sort of off track, but not. And there will be Edmonton fans going, "Oh no, he was great after Gretz," but literally, he has a leadership award named after him because he won the cup in '94 with the Rangers. That is literally it, and he made a guarantee. And that New York market loves a guarantee. Meanwhile, how many times do the guarantees backfire? Right? That happens all the time. We're definitely winning this game. And then you don't. Right?
Yeah,
but because he had one that happened.
Yeah. It's one of those self-fulfilling prophecy things, like, you point to it when it works and you just kind of quietly forget about it when it doesn't.
It's those Twitter aggregator accounts, the ones that tweet out 5 things that are going to happen and delete the 4.
Delete the other 4 and then
go, I called it.
I called it 3 months ago. Yeah.
3 months ago I said this would happen. They've deleted like 18 tweets. But that's really Messier's leadership. Yeah. So let's get to what's happened so far in the league, because this is all about predictions. But we're going to get through what's happened first of all. There have been some signings. Now we'll start with the big one. We'll start with the biggest of all of the signings. Kevin Lackinen. So
no, I think this is actually important though. Like, it's not so much about so Kevin Lankinen signs for 1 year at $875, which is a haircut over what he had last year. I think he was in like $2 million or something last year, and he is, like, honestly one of the best backups in the league. And it's surprising that he didn't get a contract up until now. He probably should have fired his agent up until this point, considering that he could have found a home in a lot of teams. But basically, this has come from the reality that Demko is working through something. He's supposed to be kind of coming back at some point, but he's going to have to work through whatever this injury is that he's going to have, and it's not going to be something that he's going to be able to fix permanently. And it's kind of scary. Like, it sounds like he's going to try and play again at some point this year, but what he looks like is another question.
He is 100% going to see the ice this year, and there were some people in our predictions who put down Thatcher Demko to win the Vezina. Yeah. And I am going to suggest that is deeply optimistic, not because I think he'll be bad. I don't know how much time he's going to spend on the ice.
Even if he's good, I don't think he's going to be able to get the volume. If he misses the first couple of months of the season,
and I don't think it's smart.
You don't win the Vezina if you start less than 50 games. You just don't.
I don't think it's smart for him to get the volume. Like, it's not smart to put him out there for it. Like, I think if I'm the Canucks, I'm going, you could win the Vezina, or we could try to be really good. Yeah. It's your decision to make here.
And I think that they'll still be okay without him, but like, clearly he is a pretty important part of that team.
I think that it's wise to play him as little as you can while still being good. Yeah. And I think that's why I joked about that one, but it's an important move.
They will probably platoon Lankinen, Silovs, and Demko when he's back, and then try and kind of work out what that looks like.
Yeah, but I still think he's going to see some time, because I think there's going to be patches where it's Silovs and Lankinen.
Yeah.
I think there'll be patches of time where Demko won't be an option.
No, absolutely. And probably I would imagine we probably won't see him until Christmas.
Yeah, there's a lot of reporting at the moment on the Christmases sort of optimistic in some ways.
Yeah.
They're not, no one's sure. That's the thing.
No.
The problem with this injury is the reporting around this injury is so everyone's going, don't know. Do not know what's going on with it. Don't know how we get past it. So, Utah, Dylan Gunther, 8 years, 7,142. They've got the cap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, this is a continuation of what we've seen with a lot of teams that are giving their young players, a long deal out of the, not bridging them, giving them a long deal out of the gate, especially I think with the potential, cap going up over the next few years that we're expecting to see. I think this makes a lot more sense for a lot of those teams. Like they're banking on the hope that, when they lock up these players long term, that these become bargain contracts in, time towards the back end of the contract. Or if it doesn't, they're probably screwed anyway, because these are the guys that are hanging their hats on.
Yeah, I have no issue with this, because I think, first of all, they've got the cap space to do it.
Yeah.
Secondly, they've talked about this idea of they want these young players to stick around. That's one of the things they really want, is they've spent their time to go out and get the talent. So why not make sure you keep them? But I have no issues with it. I think it's a decent contract. I think it's sort of good for all concerned.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it. I think he should probably perform to that, so that his next one is significantly bigger too. I anticipate that the next one will definitely be a raise.
You would assume so. I mean, it's going to depend. Like, 7 and a bit is probably, given what his potential is probably, kind of cheap. Considering that, just across, around about the same time, Lucas Raymond got 8 by 8.075 in Detroit, and Moritz Seider got 8 years at 8.55. So similar logic.
Those two are interesting contracts, because they have caused so much pain. Like, the fan base has not coped with the Seider and Raymond contracts. I think the Detroit fans are happy with those now, but who knows? I don't genuinely, I don't know what both of those are going to look like. I think they're decent deals, but I think that it also depends on what Detroit is. And this is this question that we've been asking now for 3 years. And spoiler for everyone, when we get to our predictions, I think we're going to be asking the question, what the hell is Detroit again? If Detroit don't know what they are, those contracts are interesting. If they think they're a contender, they're really good. If they think they're going to contend for playoffs, they're great deals. But if it doesn't work and they keep missing, then...
Well, I think that realistically, it's like, these are our guys now. For better or worse, these are our guys, and we have to, we have to hope that they become stars. There's the potential there for both of them, for sure. Definitely. That they could. Is it going to mature into this being a competitive playoff team, or are they going to continue to be in that murky middle ground? We'll see.
I think it's more likely than not that those two deals work out. I just don't know what
the overall team. Yeah.
What does the rest of Detroit look like? And I think the other question is, who's doing that? Because does Steve Yzerman keep a job if they absolutely bomb out again?
Yeah. Now, how much more rope?
Well, you'd assume he's untouchable, but I don't think the fan base thinks he's untouchable anymore. And who would have thought we would ever get to a point where the Detroit fan base did not believe that Steve Yzerman was untouchable? But I don't think they do anymore. Dawson Mercer, for fans of the Devils, the long national nightmare is over. 3 years at $4 million.
I mean, this was one of the ones they did actually bridge. And I think, given he had a pretty low, year last year,
I think Dawson Mercer is going to have a very big season. As you know, I took him in fantasy on the weekend in our draft. I'm tipping over 30. I'm tipping he clears 30. I think he's going to have an absolute monster year. I think he's the sort of player that Keith likes. I think he fits that profile really well, and I think he's happy taking that 3-year gamble at 4 mil and betting on himself because I'm sure he knows that next contract's mega.
I would imagine so. I mean, I think the question mark is just going to be earning deployment in New Jersey because there's so many options. They've got so many, players vying for top 6 roles that if he ends up, back down in the bottom 6, that it's going to be hard for him. But if he can keep that top 6 deployment, then the sky's the limit for sure.
Exactly. Now the really big one, obviously, which is Sidney Crosby, 2 years, 8.7 million, stays in Pittsburgh. It's
Never
the Crosby contract. It's the Crosby contract.
Yeah.
It's that simple, really. It's the Crosby contract.
Yeah, I think the only question mark there was whether or not, he was going to take, less money or more money, or whether, what was this going to be the Ovechkin situation where, he ended up with, kind of getting paid in arrears for what everything he's done in the last, 10 years or whatever, or was it going to be, is it like, okay, well, I've been on this bargain for forever. Now you're going to pay me 12 million, or is it just going to be a continue, and basically you just ended up with 2 more years on the deal that he already had, which, I don't know why it took that long if that was the case.
Yeah, exactly. I was surprised that it took so long, but I'm also not.
Yeah, it didn't sound like anyone was concerned about it, really.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as rumor mills, wanted to, make a big deal of it.
I don't think he was going anywhere. I don't think
anyone in the organization or anyone, in terms of the player side, was actually concerned.
Look, I will tell you, FSG do like turnover and they like all that sort of stuff, and they like their young value players, and that's something that obviously. And that's something obviously that the front office is very keen on as well, this idea of bargain and market inefficiencies. But they're also not stupid.
Yeah.
And you don't throw Sidney Crosby out the door. You keep Sidney Crosby at that club as long as Sidney Crosby would like to be a Penguin.
Yeah.
So that's probably another 2 years. All right. Some captain changes. The Buffalo Sabres have named Rasmus Dahlin as the new captain on the basis of, well, somebody should be the new captain, and he's the player you all know and like.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there was going to be one, player that they picked out of the, maybe if Tage Thompson hadn't had another big year last year, maybe he would have been more of a contender. The shine kind of came off him a little bit. I think he'll bounce back, but Darlene is definitely the future star, face of the franchise kind of guy that they kind of wanted to focus out on.
Yeah, look, makes perfect sense to me. Absolute perfect sense. I've got no problem with that move at all. Anaheim have named Radko Gudas the 9th captain in franchise history because everyone else is too young and I believe legally not allowed to.
Well, I mean, Rasmus Dahlin is like the youngest captain currently. I think he's like 20, but that's 24 or something. Yeah. But I mean, I guess that's the question. Is like, Anaheim kind of skipped over like some players. Like they kind of skipped over, like we thought at one point in time, like, the new wave of Anaheim was going to be, Trevor Zegras and Troy Terry. And then that didn't really happen. Like that kind of was a false start.
I'm still not convinced that Trevor Zegras is long-term there.
No, I mean, probably really not. Like I think that's probably, that we probably missed that boat now. Like, he had the potential to be, this is going to be the face of the franchise, and then it kind of just didn't happen. Is it now going to be McTavish and Carlson and kind of Gauthier and all that kind of stuff? I don't know. I guess we'll see. They've got more young guys that they're just trying to cycle through them and try and find the one that's like, this is our new, Rasmus Dahlin.
Yeah, exactly. Tampa named Victor Hedman as the captain. He's the 11th captain in franchise history. That is an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, obviously who it was going to be after Sandhurst.
Yeah, there was no question mark over that one. And the Chicago Blackhawks have got Nick Foligno to hold the seat until Connor Bedard is ready for it.
I imagine a year or two.
Yeah, basically, it's like he's going to hang on to the captaincy chair for a while, until we're at that point where it's time. I think there's a few franchises that'll be in that mode now because we've got a couple of teams with those players. Like, again, I think San Jose is going to find themselves in that situation. I think, Logan Couture being there still,
yeah,
while the rebuild happens is also a good thing for the Sharks because I think that they obviously would like eventually Macklin Celebrini to be that guy, but you don't. Obviously, he hasn't played a game yet, so let him get in the
You
league
take the
and
pressure off
play.
for a little while. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, just keep like around for a while, and then you've got a couple of alternates, and you leave the A's on everybody, and you don't have a captain until he's ready. Simple. Drew Doughty fractured his ankle. He's going to miss significant time to start the season. It's bad when you're listed as month to month.
Yeah, month to month is not what you want to hear. That I think that the conservative estimate, like based on like the surgery that he had, is at least like a couple of months, like 8 weeks plus. But we'll see how ready he is to go. This was particularly disappointing for me as I was still halfway through a fantasy draft where I had drafted him when it happened. So I was doing a slow draft, and he was I think the second defenseman that I took off the board. So that's a bummer for me. But it's fine. At least the draft hadn't finished yet, and I could pivot and draft someone else as an extra D.
Yeah, I mean look, it's especially at that part of your career. You don't want to ever see that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be an interesting opportunity for Brant Clark and Jordan Spence and so forth to kind of take on extra minutes and play on the power play and stuff, and we'll see whether Doughty gets that position when he gets back or not.
Yeah, I really hope that he's obviously you hope that he manages to come back. But we'll see obviously how the injury trends. With someone like Drew Doughty, you take your time. You don't rush him as much as he's like at the end of his career. You don't rush him. Because if you rush him, there's no chance. And then the one that happened obviously on the weekend, Patrick Laine going to Montreal to get his opportunity to hopefully rebuild his career.
And he was looking good too,
Yeah, then takes a knee-on-knee hit from Cedric Paré. Left the rink on crutches. It looked really bad. The injury.
Yeah, his knee went some ways that knees aren't supposed to go.
Yeah, look, I'm one of these people. I've seen, fatalities in Formula One, seen really nasty injuries and things, and I don't blink because I have bad knees. Knees are the one thing I cannot look at. Knees and leg injuries I can't look at and I saw that video and I was like yelping for about 5 minutes. It was not nice.
You don't want to see a knee bend that way. Look, I think that really the unfortunate thing, obviously, is that it's become this thing about the hit was obviously not good. It was he essentially was kneed and injured. They also lost David Reinbacher in the same game from a similar reason. Abajak jumped Cedric Paré later on in a or what I can only describe as like not a fight. Like, he was basically getting punched in the back of the head before he even realized that something was happening, which, look, I understand the frustration. I understand the, wanting to fight this guy who just injured, a player and all that kind of stuff. I feel like he could have still done it in a more kind of, if you want to talk about the code, you want to talk about, the right way to go about it. He never had a chance, man. Like he's, a foot shorter and wasn't even looking in the same direction.
I mean, obviously not to the same level. So before I say this, don't jump on me, Montreal Canadiens fans. But I would think that we all learnt from Bertuzzi, Steve Moore. Like I would hope we all learnt from Bertuzzi, Steve Moore, that you don't like hit someone in the back of the head and like go them when they're not facing you and stuff like that. Because like the Steve Moore thing, obviously ended in lawsuits and Steve Moore suffering significant injuries. And I get it completely. You want that retribution. You want someone to stick up for yourself. Fine. It wasn't a good look.
I mean, look, I have nothing wrong with him going up and
go after him by all means.
Yeah, go like challenge the guy to a fair fight. Absolutely,
spin him around.
Fair
spin
enough.
Him around.
Do whatever you want, but
it's ice. Spin.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that there wasn't a suspension for what happened.
Well, he got
for
fined.
either of them. For either of them, really. Yeah. Like you can't for Paré for kneeing and Jackai for nothing. I guess.
It also sparked an extra conversation around the preseason games again, and everyone going, why are we playing so many preseason games again? There's no point to it. I'm of two minds with this. I understand the whole why we're playing so many preseason games when teams are just playing, AHLers and guys that aren't ever going to make it anywhere, because then they go out and cause problems, or they go out and try to make a name for themselves with a hit.
Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%. On the other hand, one of the things I would suggest is that the NFL cut back on the number of preseason games they've got, because players were playing like one series and then out you come. We don't want you hurt before the season. But the number of massive injuries in the first 5 weeks of an NFL season now is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is that nobody plays preseason and warms themselves into games that don't matter. So they start playing flat out in a league season. They come out on the field, and within the first, couple of games, someone's pulled a hamstring, someone's done an ACL, because they haven't acclimatized themselves to the preseason yet. And I think I understand completely why players would be going, well, cut back preseason games. We don't need them. They're a bit of rubbish anyway. But it's about that body movement, and it's about that, the fine motor skills that you get into it in a rhythm in a season. So I think they should still do the preseason, and I think teams should possibly take it a little bit. What I would suggest is, if you're worried about the players and stuff like that, do preseason, but maybe play it in shorter periods where there's bursts, limit the amount of contact, but you want those fine motor skills.
I think there's always going to be the chance of something bad happening. Like, the reality is, like, I don't have any problem with, them playing 5 or 6 games for the most part. The veterans mostly only play the last couple anyway. Yeah. It's unfortunate, obviously, when these kind of things happen. But realistically, the exact same thing could have happened in game 1 of the season. Yep. You're playing 82 games. Unfortunately, injuries are going to happen. I don't think it's actually... it's especially unfortunate to get injured in a preseason game that doesn't matter and doesn't, mean anything. But it's just as likely to happen in the first week.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. For me, it's more about this idea of, blaming the preseason for the injuries and blaming the preseason for all of that. It's hockey. Someone's going to get hurt. I do think that you can't completely scrap a preseason, because I think that the fine motor skills and stuff are too important. That's just,
I mean, you need to get into game shape realistically. Yeah. Like, especially some of the, some players really need that transition from training to, to actually kind of playing in games, even if they're not 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really important. So anyway, that's all we're going to talk about now for that. We're going to get ourselves into, however, the predictions. So now, what we do is every year, for those who aren't aware, we go through and look at our season predictions. We have all of the awards. Then we go through and predict who we think is going to finish where in the standings. Then we go through and predict what we think is going to happen in the playoffs in terms of conference finals. Who's going to play who's going to win the final, and who's going to get the Conn Smythe. And then we talk about first overall pick, and we make 3 bold predictions. So what I've got is a lovely little handy guide for everybody. So we'll just transition into that now. So our predictions.
Yes.
So now, we don't talk about these before we make them. There are some we're agreeing on. There are some obvious ones here.
Usually we're seeing them for the first time when we talk about them now, but we did want to make it graphic this time.
Yeah, we want to make graphic this time. So I saw them. I'd already locked my predictions in before I saw what Brendan's were.
These are the first time I'm seeing yours. For sure.
Yeah, they are the first time you're seeing mine. Now, the heart. Look, I'm starting to really dislike the Hart and the Ted Lindsay, because I feel like it's just to hand it to McDavid every year before you start the season, and then we actually worry about who actually earns an award.
Well, especially with Ted Lindsay, like, I think that we get sometimes like a little bit more question marks around the Hart, but the players know who the best player is, and it's always for as long as he's not injured and in playing shape, it's going to be McDavid.
So what I think is bugging me a little bit is that if you have a season where you suggest that somebody other than McDavid should win the Hart, you are instantly seen as being a heretic. And well, obviously it's McDavid, and I think that in some cases, if you've got a team where they should be middling and they're up at the top of their conference and they're having an absolute, that player is the most important player. And I think that the way that the NHL defines it, and everyone gets stuck in semantics and you have arguments for hours, I don't think other leagues struggle with it as much as the NHL does. Like the NBA doesn't struggle with giving the MVP to different players. They just don't. Whereas in the NHL, it feels almost a crime if you suggest that someone other than Connor McDavid should win it.
Well, I think the tricky thing is that, the argument becomes about like, oh, well, who's, the most important to their team. And realistically, it would probably be a goalie every year if that was actually the criteria. But
and they very rarely win it.
yeah, but it becomes a question, there's the unspoken part of it too, is realistically it has to be a playoff team. Like no one actually ever gets picked from a team that doesn't make the playoffs. And if the Oilers miss the playoffs, that's your chance where McDavid's not going to get it, because that's really what a lot of people are kind of voting on. They're like, well, how important could you be if you didn't make the playoffs?
But even remember what happened, like it was the year they had the really, really bad season.
Yeah.
And McDavid was still, but he's still the best player in the league. You got to give it to him.
Yeah, it was the only reason that they weren't in the lottery. But like the reality is that it can be someone else. Like, there was occasionally there'll be a thing about like, oh well, actually is what McKinnon's doing more important, because the team has injuries and they've done this and all that. Occasionally there's someone in with a chance, but like the field is McDavid realistically, because of just
I get it. I get it. I mean, look,
and the team that he's on.
Look, I personally think that Shesterkin probably should have, because if you take Shesterkin off the Rangers, there's every chance they miss playoffs completely and like absolutely plummet. So
definitely,
but that again comes back down to how do you define the most valuable, and that's that whole again. Only the NHL does the semantics argument around this. Everyone else just goes, yeah, he had the best season, give it to him.
Yeah, if you're going to try and make a safe pick, the safe money's on McDavid.
The safe money's on McDavid, so I'll just give it to McDavid anyway. Even though as we'll get to the predictions, I don't think Edmonton are going to be brilliant. You do. Vesna. So you went Igor. I think Igor will be the best goalie, but I think Saros is going to win the award.
I mean, it's possible for sure. Like the logic behind a few of the predictions that I've made is that Shesterkin is coming into a contract year. He is primed to get essentially an incredibly big contract and get paid for the amount of carrying this team that he does in true tradition of New York Rangers goalies. He had a little bit of a down start to last season, but finished really strong, finished at the top of his game. I suspect that he'll carry that into this year and have like a really strong season and earn himself a really big contract.
I think Igor Shesterkin is and will be the best goalie in the league this year. I think that the voting committee, as we all know, rewards the goalie on the team that has the biggest jump. I think Nashville are going to be good. I think UC Saros wins the Vezina because they go, look at where Nashville have finished. UC Saros gets the Vezina over Igor, because how often are we going to get to give the Vezina to somebody not called Igor Shesterkin? So I still think that Igor Shesterkin is the best goalie in the league. I still think he's going to have a very good season, and we'll come back to that in a bit.
My top three for to be clear would be Shesterkin, Saros, and Ottinger.
Yeah, I think they're my three as well. I've got Saros winning it from Shesterkin. I've got Ottinger down, and we'll get to why in a moment. Calder, now I'm going to assume that you did this to anger me. No, look, I get it completely, but I don't. The kid's dynamite. The kid's dynamite. He's so good. And I actually think, not to spoil a prediction, but I actually think he's kind of going to ruin San Jose's season. We're not going to make a playoffs. Don't panic. But I think he's going to make sure we're not last.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be him and Will Smith together are going to be the reason why we're not picking first overall.
No, I mean, look, I can absolutely see. I can absolutely see that. I did actually, I had Celebrini as my runner-up too. I think that, like, just in terms of like the lifting that he'll have to do and and the kind of requirements around, but I think that he probably has a good chance. Like even if he scores a few less than Michkov, he might get it just because of the responsibilities of playing center. Like center tends to get a little bit of a bump in this. But I don't know. Maybe it's hopeful. It's weird because I hate the fact that Matvei Michkov is on the Philadelphia Flyers. Because I hate the Flyers. But I also really like him as a player, and I really think that despite being on a Tortorella team, he looks to be given the reins to generate offense, and I think that he may just score a shitload of points.
I mean, my only worry about Michkov is the fact that he's got Tortorella. And I don't.
Well, I mean, he's already kind of come out and said, like, basically, we're just going to let him do whatever the fuck he wants. Like,
I mean, he kind of has to.
Yeah, we don't have. What's
he going to say? No, tight rein, tight leash.
Yeah, I don't have the quote in front of me, but essentially the gist of it was like, we sorely miss having a player of this kind of creativity and skill, and we've told him not to worry about the other stuff. We'll take care of the other stuff, and he should just
don't defend.
Do his
don't
thing,
defend. Don't defend. The rest of the team didn't for the second half of the season.
So
why should you?
I don't know. I'd like to. I'm hoping that he's gonna blow the doors off.
Yeah, as I said, I
don't know if that means the team's going to be any good, but
I have been watching Celebrini, and he's as advertised. He is definitely as advertised. So and look, it is a year where I've actually got 2 Sharks in my 3. Will Smith is also in my 3. I think Will Smith is going to have a very good season, and I think Will Smith is going to have.
It could even be, in theory, Askarov could be in there.
Well, we'll get. Yeah, I think that Askarov could be as well. I think Celebrini and Smith are going to be very, very strong. I think the Sharks' defense is an absolute dog pile. But like the defense is abysmal.
The thing against Askarov, really.
I think the Ryan Wasowski, I think his brief this year for the Sharks is go out there and just be a track meet. Just go out there and be fun. Fly around the ice. Do some fun stuff. We don't really... Defensively, we're going to be abysmal. Don't worry about that. Just go and have fun and look good. And I'm pretty sure that Hasso Plattner just wants them to put something on the ice that looks attractive to play, and that's what they're going to do. All right. The Art Ross, we don't really need to talk about that. It's McDavid. The Rocket...
Yeah, I mean, look, some people got close, for sure. Like, obviously, it was Kucherov last year, but, McDavid obviously has the inside track on points, for sure.
Yeah, I think... I agree with you. I think McDavid's... He's fairly a lock. Matthews possibly could push him. It depends on.
There could be a year where McKinnon takes off, but with the surrounding cast that he's got compared to McDavid and Kucherov, I'm not seeing it this year.
Now I've still got Matthews winning the Rocket.
I've still got Matthews winning. So I was still talking about the Art Ross, but Matthews. I think Matthews is the only one who has like a legit chance of easily putting up 60.
I think Austin Matthews is possibly the only player that I think is Berube proof. And I think that might be a term I use a lot this year, is that our players Berube proof, because I'm still thoroughly unconvinced by the idea of Berube in that job. And I just think that Austin Matthews can't be contained even by more get back into your zone coaching.
The thing that can contain Austin Matthews is injuries. Like the reality is like on a pace, like he is by and away like the top goal scorer.
Oh, he is.
If he misses 20 games, that's where it gets interesting, because he could still play 65 games and score 50 goals. And so it's really just a matter of, if he plays the whole 82, absolutely it's Matthews in a walk. If he plays 65, then you all of a sudden
but it's a question.
I think and Draisaitl and everyone has a look.
But I think if he plays 65, I think it's a question, and I don't think with any other player 65 would be a question for the Rocket.
No.
That's the fun part with Matthews, is that I think that, if Matthews only plays 65 and doesn't get all the way to 82, you go, well, maybe everyone else has a chance. He's not winning it. And that's the stupid part about the way that Matthews' shooting is unreal. Right, the Norris, so you went with Kyle McCarr, I went with Quinn Hughes.
I mean, look, I like Quinn Hughes, but I can't see a world where he wins it 2 years in a row. I just don't see it.
My only question mark is I found Colorado tricky this year. I found them
Yeah,
really.
look, they don't look as good on paper as you would
I've
expect.
I've still got them. We'll get into the thing. I've still got them doing really decently,
Yeah.
but I don't. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Look,
Um,
I think McCarr still has with that like a chance to be over a point per game, which is just not something that you're going to get from any other defenseman. And the reality is, look, I don't know. It could be Darling. It could be it could be Bouchard. It could be a bunch of other guys or whatever. But I
I
think McCarr's
usually
got
like
the
putting
inside
down.
of
I usually like putting down Adam Fox, but again, I think the Rangers are going to have some struggles this year, and so I don't think
yeah.
Fox will be seen that way. So the Selkie, we even have to pretend we looked up anybody else, or we just wrote down Barkov and moved on with our lives.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would like to. I think I suggested Hisha last year, and I think that he's probably got a chance. But
I'm
um,
I'm going to
look,
put.
but while Barkov's there, he's the new Bergeron.
No, I've got your answer for you. It's going to be Berube, and Berube is going to make Mitch Marner into the most
Oh
responsible
gosh.
defensive forward you've ever seen in your life. He's not
Uh,
going to leave his zone. Um,
I mean, look, maybe this will be the year that that Mark Stone plays 82 games and jumps back into being but I don't see it.
Spoiler
He's
alert: when we get to biggest bold prediction, and I asked the Australian NHL fans Facebook page about that. One of my favorite bold predictions was Mark Stone to go on LTIR.
Oh gosh. I mean,
So
look, the Mark Stone thing is tricky because he is
it's genuine, but
but from like a Selkie perspective, he is the closest thing to like Pavel Datsuk in terms of like lifting sticks, stealing pucks, being that defensive thing on not necessarily even from a center position. Obviously, he's mostly playing the wing. He is the really the only winger that has any chance at it. But that was probably
I
5 years
mean,
past being a chance, an
look,
opportunity.
they just need to rename the Selkie the Bergeron and move on with their lives.
Yeah.
The Jack Adams, now the Jack Adams for Coach of the Year. I've gone Sheldon Keefe because I think again you've got to galaxy brain this, and the
Yeah.
way you galaxy brain this is which team was shit last year that's
Oh no,
suddenly
absolutely.
decent.
That was also a very like. So I was either going to do it for Coach of the Year or GM of the Year, and
Yeah,
I went the exact same logic for GM of the Year. So I have Tom Fitzgerald, for the same
yeah.
team, for my GM of the Year. I picked Laviolette in New York because so often this is the your
Because
goalie played out of their mind award.
they didn't give in to him last year when they
Yeah,
actually won the
yeah. It's
President's
not a
Trophy.
it's not a coincidence that the goalie who wins the Vesna, their coach, very often wins the Jack Adams. That's a very very tight
Yeah,
link.
it's very closely linked. And yeah, I went with Keith. I went with Barry Trotz for the GM of the year because I think there's going to be this massive groundswell within the league. First of all, I think Nashville will be very good. Secondly, I think that they're going to really look forward to giving Barry Trotz an award for GM of the year. I think the league is really looking forward to giving it to him. I think they've already made their mind up. I think they've half engraved the name.
I have some question marks, to be honest, about Nashville.
We'll talk
I
about Nashville
think
when we get to their standings because I really
yeah,
want to
okay,
get into
that's fair. That's
yeah.
fair.
So the
But I mean,
President's Trophy.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about them in terms of the President's Trophy, so
Yeah, I've given them
you,
the President's Trophy.
yeah. I will hold off on my Nashville comments for now
Yeah.
then, but I picked Dallas just because they were, I think, like 2 points shy of winning it last year, and I think that other teams have taken a bigger step back than them, and I don't know, it just seemed like the scratch pick to pick them.
Yep. Okay, so we put out the poll. So at the time that I actually took the voting, McDavid had 28 out of 43 for the Heart, which I thought was really interesting. McKinnon, Matthews, Pedersen had several votes. Quinn Hughes.
I could see it, but he would have to take a pretty big step forward.
Yeah. Quinn Hughes, Sidney Crosby, Kucherov.
The Penguins would have to be a fucking dynamite team for Crosby to win that.
Somebody did predict that the Penguins were going to make the Stanley Cup final. So, and I know it wasn't you because I know you didn't vote.
No, it wasn't me.
Right, caller.
No, I'm not that one-eyed.
So
yeah.
Celebrini, So Celebrini was 20 out of 43 votes.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Stankoven
obviously that's the easy option.
Stankoven was a really big dark horse there.
Stankoven, I think, is a good pick. Like, I know that you had some question marks about that. I don't know that he'll necessarily get the same kind of deployment that Celebrini
I
and
think
so
it's
forth will
deployment.
get.
Is my
Yeah,
argument on that.
because obviously, he's not going to be on the top line in
Yeah.
Dallas. There's still that Hince Robertson line, which I think has Sagan on the wing at the moment. Unless he gets onto that line, I just don't see him putting up the points for it from a second line.
And that's my question mark over that with Stankoven is literally he's just not going to get deployment. Whereas
Yeah, I mean, like
Celebrini
he's
will
fucking incredible. Like he's gonna be a future
Celebrini
star for
will
sure.
yeah.
But I
Celebrini
don't
will
know
get
that he'll win the Calder because of it.
Celebrini will get deployment. Michkov will get deployment. Hudson will get deployment, and a lot of Montreal fans jumping all over that.
Hudson, I think, is an interesting one because I don't, he's definitely not like he's also a player that I targeted in drafts. I picked him up in that same draft that Dowdy went down, and he's kind of my backup in that regard. But he doesn't have like the top power play currently. I think he has a very good inside track at getting it, but he has to beat out Mike Matheson first, who's been good in that role. I don't think that he's going to be given hard minutes.
I don't think they're going to rush him.
There's going to be two or three guys above him in terms of the depth chart, in terms of minutes, and in terms of difficult minutes. I imagine that Lane Hudson is going to get really sheltered minutes, which I don't think is going to bear well for him in terms of winning.
I think the difference is, again, I think that I think player like Hudson will get sheltered,
which is great for fantasy. It's not great for the Calder.
Hudson will get sheltered. Stankoven,
you need to be a number one minute eating. You need to be Moritz Seider to win. In terms of that deployment to win the Calder. Although he got a bit sheltered last year.
I think Hudson and Stankoven are both going to not have the deployment that Celebrini, Michkov, and Smith are going to have. Yeah. Smith getting votes was fascinating,
which has nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with them. They're incredible players.
It's because the teams are really, really bad. And Montreal, I don't think will be good. Don't get me wrong.
No,
but I think that they are a little bit further along in this idea of, well, we're still not going to give him those minutes. Whereas San Jose don't have a choice with Celebrini and Smith.
Yeah, no,
that's what they've got. They don't
have anyone else. They don't have anyone else to eat up those top line minutes.
The Vezina, 30 out of 43 went Shesterkin.
It's the easy pick, I mean, for sure.
The Rocket, Matthews, 28 out of 43. And again, kudos to whomever decided that Mark Schleifele and Kaprizov were their picks for getting the Rocket Richard.
Look, I like Kaprizov, but he hasn't broken 50 in his career.
And Mark Scheifele has broken 27 once.
Yeah,
he got 40 in that season, but he's broken it once. And spoiler alert, I don't have the Jets being good. And then Jack Adams, I had Keefe again, and the majority had Keefe, but it was a bit more of a spread. We had Keefe, we had we had DeBoer. We had a really interesting Jim Montgomery's name was on there. Berube got on there a few times.
I mean, look, it's fair enough. It is a hard one to pick because
John Cooper didn't make it at all, by the way.
So, realistically, so often it goes to the coach of the team who did better than we were expecting. We expected you to suck, and you turned out to be not so bad. It could very much go to, Columbus or some other team that we all thought was going to be shit that just ended up scraping into a playoff position.
Look, you and I both know that I think we've both got the exact same thing in our mind, which is that the Jack Adams is an award made for John Tortorella every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's got a team that everyone goes, well, they're going to be terrible, and the next thing you know,
and then they're
off they go.
Yeah, and they have a really good goalie run, and all of a sudden they scrape in. It's a shock that that fucking Washington didn't win last year for the
I thought Spencer Carberry was a lock.
Yeah.
So all right, let's get into it. So our actual predictions now. So let's start with the Atlantic. Now, interestingly enough, I went with Florida. I am higher on Tampa than I am on Florida, which is going to surprise a lot of people. But I went with Florida on the basis of I think they're going to drop off. It's more that Tampa and Toronto are so much of a question mark. And I'm I think that Florida will have a drop off. I don't think they'll be anywhere near what they were last year. but I think that Tampa will spend part of the season working out what this looks like. And I think Toronto could spend a significant portion of the season working out what this looks like.
I think all of those teams have big question marks. Like all of
Yep.
those teams could appear in
Yeah.
any order. Like I am not like I don't think that there's a big separation between and I have those top 4 teams making the playoffs.
Well,
I don't know
I'm
if
going to tell you straight up, I don't.
Yeah, so you have only got the top 3.
I think the top 3. I think both wild cards are coming.
That's very
from
possible
Metro.
too, because I don't think there's going to be a huge point separation between any of those teams. Obviously,
I think Boston's defense is terrible.
Yeah, Tampa obviously has lost a lot of their depth. They're not who they used to be. They've had a lot of question marks and stuff. I think that Gensel will come in and be good, but they're not the deep team that they used to be. They're not the Tampa of old. Toronto obviously, have their own, question marks. They continue to, be, that team, but they are generally a good regular season team.
Yeah.
Florida, I think the big question mark is how much of a cup hangover they have. I expect them to still be a good team, whether or not they, come out as strong and end up on the, they very much could, win the Atlantic again easily, or they could be kind of middling for a large portion of the year.
So
Boston have to fucking fall off at some point. I can't fucking believe that Boston is still even in this.
So my question mark over Florida is what the hell's going to go on in net? Because I don't think that. I think a lot of people have got this idea that Bobrovsky is just going to power. I think we're going to see the actual drop. And
how old is Bobrovsky? I feel like he's like 37, 36.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to see the regression there. Now
it will happen at some point for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we saw bits and pieces of it last year though. Like he was unbelievable, and then he got really wobbly again. And that's the thing. I think in a regular season, he's more likely, and especially now he's won the cup. I think you're more likely to get a Bobrovsky that goes, "I've got the cup," and I know people are going to go, "Oh, that's disrespectful." No, that's Bobrovsky. Like that's his personality of
I mean, it wasn't so long ago. It wasn't more than a few years ago that we were talking about being like the worst goalie contract because he went from winning the Vezina, getting that massive contract, to being shit for a couple of years.
But he won the Vezina.
He kind of won the net back, and then he kind of lost it a little bit last year.
But if you remember when he won the Vezina, he won the Vezina off the back of, oh, we thought you were going to be shit again.
Yeah,
but it was the contract year, and that's also the one that kept Tortorella in a job. So
exactly that won him the Jack Adams.
Now the top 3, I think, are the top 3, and I think we agree on that. Boston, as I said, I think are 4th. I've got Boston. I said off that. I don't think they're making the playoffs. I think we're getting 2 from the Metro. I think Boston.
I've gotten burnt so many times in terms of saying that Boston are done.
I know.
It's so hard for me to say. I mean, even with like every year, they look like you look at it on paper and just go, Jesus Christ, like this depth is terrible. And then they put up like 120 points.
But when was the last time you saw this much disquiet within Boston in terms of? They've moved one of their goalies and they still haven't signed the other one.
It's definitely the worst that it's gotten for sure.
Problems. There are big problems there.
Yeah, obviously, Marchand's gonna come back from like 5 different surgeries in the offseason. Yep. Like Pasternak is the only reason that this team is any good.
I think
honestly.
I think Pasternak's the thing that keeps them clear of the other 4.
Yeah, if they're one Pasternak injury away from being a fucking lottery team.
They really are. Now the last 4, you could kind of put these, I think, in almost any order you damn well want. I have Ottawa a bit higher up, and that's only because I think they will start with some good goaltending. I am not convinced it's going to be good by the end of the season. I genuinely think that. Look, I think there's a reason that Boston moved off, and I think they made their decision in sticking with Swayman. So I think Boston made the move in terms of we're getting out of this before there's the complete collapse. Also, the difference is you're now playing in Ottawa, and like that's a team that just, for all of the promise and all of the times they're going to win the off season. How many times did that ever translate into the regular season? Like they never. And again, Buffalo, I've got the same thing. Detroit are the same thing. They are all teams that win the off season regularly and are then terrible. And
I think that the next 2 teams on my list are in a similar kind of group. Like you could group those top 4 for me. And then
I think there's only 1 point between the 3 of them.
Yeah, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit are kind of again another like tier for me of like teams that in theory should be better, but I just don't know how much. Like, and that's the real kind of question mark. And I know almost would have put Montreal in this if it wasn't for the line A injury. I feel like that was a kind of step forward that they had that maybe they get back to that, but that's probably sets them back a little bit, in that regard. But Buffalo, could take a big step forward. Ottawa could take a big step forward. Detroit could. I just don't know. It's a big question mark.
Yeah, I think the idea that you've got Buffalo there, and so you've got this idea of a team that how can you have a team that's got Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, and go, oh yeah, they're not very good, and you're like that's crazy as a concept. But it's accurate too. Like they're just not there. Detroit, I have no concept of what the Detroit Red Wings are. I don't think the Detroit Red Wings know what the Detroit Red Wings are. I don't think Steve Yzerman knows what the Red Wings are. I think that everyone in Detroit is absolutely baffled. I don't think they know what the hell that team is. And 6 feels about right. Again, as you said, it could be.
I mean, look, they could be fourth, they could be sixth, they could be eighth. I just don't know. A lot of these teams on paper, it's so hard to tell. Like, people have been saying, this is the team, this is the year that that Buffalo or Ottawa or Detroit, literally all three of those will make the playoffs for 3 years now.
I just think there's a different caliber between Florida, Tampa, Toronto, and everyone else.
Yes, agreed. There's a
difference maker
for sure.
There's a difference maker. You've got Kucherov and Vasilevsky in Tampa. Toronto, what you've got there. Florida, what you've got there. Those guys are difference makers.
Yes,
I don't think any of those other teams have that yet. There's potential for that.
Someone could take a step forward,
but they don't have it.
Yeah, it's not a lock for sure.
All right, so predictions. Who will win the Atlantic according to the group? Florida, 41.9%, then Toronto. Then we went down and we had the Detroit one. Thank you, Tim. Tim was Detroit. I know that. And Tampa was the other prediction. Interestingly enough, like Boston got 18.6%.
I mean, look, to be honest, Florida and Toronto are the safe options. But I wanted to be interesting and pick a big year for Tampa.
Look, I think that Tampa. I think that Tampa will probably do better in the playoffs than Florida. I'm going to say that straight up.
Quite possibly, they could end up in the wild card spot, and they might still.
All right, so the Metro. Unusual for me because normally I have the Rangers sitting at the top of the Metro. I don't have the Rangers sitting at the top of the Metro this year. I have them sitting in a wild card. I have 2 wild cards. I think that the 2 wild cards are coming from the Metro. I have Carolina obviously at the top. You've got the Rangers. I have question marks around
following on from my Shesterkin,
thing. I have big questions around Carolina.
Yeah.
But
yes, me too. Yeah.
I think that Carolina, are kind of it's the last go around for this particular group in Carolina. Before they make, obviously the Burns contracts up, a bunch of other contracts are up, and they've got to start looking forward. So this is the last year for Carolina to really sort of run the group they've got currently back. I think it's good enough to get over the line. And I think a large reason for that is going to be that I think New Jersey are going to be back. And you've got the same thing, New Jersey. I think
New Jersey, honestly, are the team that I'm the most sure about as a good team.
They're an they were an Askarov signing away, as far as I'm concerned, from being favorites in the Metro.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like obviously they've done a lot to shore up their goaltending. They were better, I think, than they showed, and they should at some point, actually be a good team. The tricky thing, obviously, I had to follow through with my Rangers logic and kind of put them relatively high. I wouldn't be shocked if they were lower. I just couldn't. I think that there's still a bunch of flaws on all of those teams, like of that top 4, because I have that top 4 making it in terms of like Penguins being in the wild card spot and everything. There is just so many, there's question marks around, the Rangers, there's question marks around, Carolina with the step back that they've taken. They don't look as strong on paper as they have previously. And the Penguins, realistically, if they had a playoff, if they had a power play last year that wasn't the worst in the league, they would have made the playoffs anyway. Like that, they don't even have to be that much better than they were. They just pretty much have to be the same as they were last year, but with a functional like power play, and they will make the playoffs in this division. But the Islanders, I just don't believe in the Islanders. Like they're just. The Islanders are the floating mark of between good teams and bad teams in the Metro, like decent teams and terrible teams. They're the average. They're the pure like average, making just the amount of points, and it's just a matter of if teams are shit or not as to whether or not they go past them.
So my logic with the Islanders being third is, for the record, I don't like the Islanders as a team. I don't like their construction. I think Lamoriello has done a very bad job with this roster. But they're solid. They're not great.
Yeah,
they're not
terrible.
bad.
They never perform terribly. They just perform enough.
They're not great. They're not bad. They're just solid.
Yeah.
And I think within the Metro, I think solid will get them where they need to be, because I can see them just going on a mid-season run where if you remember last season, they were terrible. Then they sort of had that little bounce back where they had a couple of games in the middle that didn't quite go their way. That's what ended up costing them at the end of the season, because they came on fairly decently towards the end of the season and were actually a decent lineup by the end of it.
Yeah.
But by that point, the gap was too big. I think what they're aiming for this year, and again, it's also the Patrick Roy thing, is solid middle. Just be a very solid have a solid middle stretch of games. And if you overturn, say, 5 or 6 of those ones that went the other way, you find yourself in the top 3.
Yeah.
Because I think they were that's sort of where I'm saying. So I'm not saying they're going to be brilliant.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of just okay teams in this division,
and I think
to be honest.
the other thing that sort of sticks with me, and this is why the Rangers are 4th, I have no faith in that Rangers lineup to find the net consistently. I think, as we said, I think they are really relying on Igor, and I think the problem is he can't put the puck in the net for them. And I think
that's
too often
classically been the problem.
Too often, too often he covers up. Like same as Lundqvist did for all those years.
Yeah.
He covers up the fact that they don't score anywhere near what they should. Now, is there a chance that I think Lafreniere could have a decent season this year? Yeah, I think he has a fairly big season. We all know this. I am the world's biggest Panarin doubter.
They've taken him off the top power play for some reason, and I don't understand why.
Watched him. They've watched him.
But he had like his best season last year on that top power play. I don't get what their thinking is.
It also wouldn't shock me. It also wouldn't shock me that the other problem is too, like the way that Rangers roster is built, and we'll get to this because having done the notes, I know we actually have only one of our predictions is identical. It's not identical because I actually come up with a number because we're going to talk about Igor's contract, but.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, this
is the last year before the Igor contract, right? That roster is so haphazardly thrown together with ways for the Rangers to find the cap space for the next contract. I don't like the depth. I think the depth of that contract is not great. They're stuck with Trouba. They cannot get out from under that Trouba contract. And if you ask Rangers fans, they will tell you he's a defensive liability. And I think that the Rangers are going to take a step backwards because I think we're finally going to get to the season. Adam Fox can't do the entirety of the defense on his own, right? You can't have Fox and Shesterkin trying to play everybody on the other team's offense. It just doesn't work. And I think that if Panarin doesn't have a great season and if the scoring dries up, and also they don't have a center. They just don't. Like they don't have anyone down the
What's
middle who
happening
can control.
with Vinajad? Like,
It's just not worked to the level that it's worked in previous seasons. And I think it's because, again, I love Zibanejad as a 2. If you have Mika Zibanejad as your second, fantastic.
Which is essentially what he's doing right now, because Trocheck at the moment is technically playing on their top line. And Trocheck honestly has done better than I expected that he would
But I
do.
still wouldn't want, at this point in time, you don't want a this age Vincent Trocheck as your first line.
As your top line center. No, you probably don't want a 32-year-old Vincent Trocheck as your top line center. He's like
and
32, right?
this is the issue, is that the Rangers, I think, are a center.
31.
They're a center away. And I think if they could have moved, I genuinely believe if they could have moved Trouba, that they would have either gone for a center or they would have possibly then flipped a winger as well and gone for a center and another wing, or made a couple of other moves. They've got some young prospects in defense they're comfortable with. But I just feel like the Rangers are, and I've got the Penguins making it in the last wild card on the last game of the season.
Which sounds about right, yeah.
Yep. And we've both got Philly, Washington, and Columbus down the bottom, and I don't think there's much to talk about there, really. I think Columbus are in for obviously a hard season in many ways.
Especially unfortunate.
In many ways. All right, and so the predictions from the group, 53% said the Rangers are going to win. The next one was Carolina, then New Jersey. And there was also a little bit of love shown for Pittsburgh. There was a little bit of love shown for Philadelphia, which was good for you. Keep riding that lightning. And Columbus, keep riding that lightning, boys.
Yeah, good luck.
Well done. Woo! Luck. Anyway, moving on. The Central.
Yeah.
Okay, so get on to your Nashville point.
Yeah, so look, I think it's very possible, obviously, that Nashville could be good. Like I like players on their team. I just don't know. Like they've had a lot of overhaul in terms of, like, they brought in Stamkos, they brought in Marchessault. That there's a big kind of change in the way that their kind of structure works. Like that's 2 parts of their top power play, 2 parts of their top 6. I just don't know. Like it could be great. Obviously, they were a pretty decent team last year. They in theory have improved, but there's a lot of question marks around players that haven't played for them before, in their 30s, trying to catch lightning. And I still think they'll be good. I just don't think that they'll be winning the division good.
Okay, so my Dallas point. There's been a bit of change. There's a lot of inconsistencies there. There's players who are getting significantly older. I think they're a very good team. It's almost the exact same conversation we're having here. Dallas
has like 3 rookies that we talked about as potential Calder. It's not the same conversation.
So let me get to what I think is the deciding point.
Yeah.
What season of Peter DeBoer are we in?
Obviously, that's always a possibility.
It's that simple. I genuinely think what we saw at the end of the year in Dallas, and I know there were, there's mitigating circumstances, blah, blah. I think what we saw at the end of the year in Dallas, I've seen that movie. I've watched it take place. I've watched it play out. I like a lot of the young players that Dallas have got. I think they're doing a very good job of rebuilding. I think they're going to be very good. One of my predictions will involve Dallas. I'm going to tell you that one straight up. I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I still think they're going to be really, really tight and close.
I think we just have those 2 teams the other way around for sure. I would be on the same page with Dallas if it wasn't for Wyatt Johnson, Stankoven, Maverick Bork, those kind of guys. I think that's the differentiating factor for me.
I think for me it's, and look, I think Ottinger is obviously going to be great. I think Saros is going to be great. I think it's going to be. I think for me it's just a lot of it too. I think, and it feels lame to say it because you hear people talk about it. I think the vibes are different in terms of Nashville feels like they feel renewed, and it's up at the moment. And I think if they can ride that, especially in Nashville, I think that's going to be big for them. Whereas I think Dallas, I think the way it ended last year for Dallas, they were flat by the end of it. They were just flat. And not just because they lost when they lost, but the way it sort of tapered off at the end there, I think that it just, again, we talk about cup hangovers and there can be positive, like winning the cup can be a cup hangover. I think Dallas might have a bit of a hangover from how those playoffs ran. That's the only thing I've got down there in terms of that. And again, I think I think Dallas in that third are going to have a big charge to third. I think they're going to have a bit of a dip at the start of the season, and then I think they'll get their mojo going. I just think by that point, Nashville will be clear.
Yeah.
Colorado.
I will say that of those top few teams, Dallas is the only one that I'm like kind of most confident in, just because I have a bunch of question marks around Colorado, around Nashville, around Minnesota.
Who the hell knows with Colorado?
Everyone else in this whole division is like, I don't know.
I put Colorado second because they've got to go somewhere, and it just
and they
feels
could be third.
right.
They could be,
who knows with the injuries? Who knows? Like,
I mean, if their stars are their stars, then they'll be good.
At this point in time, we don't know who's playing for them and who's on LTIR.
The rest of their depth is, not great.
Yeah, like exactly. Again, Minnesota. Like now, the one big difference I've got is I've got Winnipeg in 7th. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Like outside of Connor and Hellebuck, like there's not a heap there. I don't think that there's a big difference in my list between Winnipeg and St. Louis and Utah and all that kind of, like, I think that they're all kind of like around about that wild card spot.
I also don't believe that. I think St. Louis. I've got St. Louis at 4th, and I think the interesting bit for me with St. Louis in 4th is I don't think Binnington's going to be in net by the time they get to the end of the season.
It's entirely possible. Yeah.
I think he's losing the job. I genuinely think he's losing.
It's a matter of time for sure. Before he takes over.
Yeah, I think he'll take over fairly early in the season. Chicago, yes, Bedard. I think Bedard will be brilliant again this year. But have you seen Chicago?
Yeah, I don't think that they're quite at the same level as the rest of those teams. So again, I think similar to what we're talking about in some of those other divisions, I've kind of got the tiers in this thing, which is really just Dallas, Colorado, Nashville is kind of the ones that I'm most confident about actually being playoff teams. Minnesota, Winnipeg, St. Louis are kind of that next tier of competing for a wild card spot. And then Utah is almost there, and Chicago is a step below.
Again, I went with the vibes thing on Utah. This idea of renewal. Let's go. Look at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could be good. They could be decent.
I think I'm not saying good. I'll say decent. And I think that for me as well, with Winnipeg, when the wheels fall off Winnipeg, they really fall off Winnipeg, and that's kind of why I think I have them there, because I don't have them being good. So in my mind, when the wheels fall off Winnipeg, it just collapses in a heap. So that's why I've got them there. Let's have a look.
Obviously, if they have Hellebuck miss time, they're cooked. They're bottom of the division cooked.
They're completely reliant on what happens with Hellebuck. The poll results: Dallas 48%, then Colorado 27%, then Nashville at 11%, Winnipeg at 9.3%, and then Utah. We had a Utah, folks. So shine on you, crazy diamond.
Well done.
All right. The Pacific.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to start with the really obvious one, San Jose. So I'm going to start with San Jose. We will get to the other conversation, but I don't have them last. Have you seen Anaheim?
Yeah, look, I debated between Anaheim and San Jose for sure. It very much could go either way. I don't know. I don't know what exactly convinced me in the end to go that way or the other. I think it could be a couple of points in it, realistically. San Jose obviously will take a big step forward. I just don't know how much of it, from the point total that they had last year, I just don't know how big that will be.
I would like San Jose to finish where you have them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. My problem is that San Jose will have to play Anaheim and Calgary. I don't like Calgary. I really don't like. I still think they're a bit confused. They're getting better, but I still think they're a bit confused.
I don't think that they're that bad.
Anaheim. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
San Jose, realistically, if San Jose destroy Anaheim, which I think they very much could in terms of just a track meet. I think those games are going to be track meets. San Jose will get, in my mind, to 6th off the back of the fact they play in the Pacific and they're playing other teams at the bottom of the Pacific. And other teams at the bottom of the Pacific are a special breed of bad. And so I think Anaheim are really atrocious. Somebody, by the way, in their predictions had Anaheim making the playoffs, and I salute you. But that's if I had said San Jose making the playoffs, I feel like that's more realistic than Anaheim making the playoffs. I think Anaheim are in massive trouble still. Like
this team will cannibalize itself for points for sure, and I just don't. But I don't know which way that'll go.
So let's just get to the top. I've got Edmonton 3rd because I've got to revert to type, but B.
Look, I think with a healthy Demko, I might have picked Vancouver. But like look, I've gone on record with some of our previous episodes and saying I really thought Edmonton were going to take a step back after the run that they had. I think that they've done well to at least kind of stay the course. They have some of those core, pieces to be competitive, and obviously McDavid and Draisaitl will go a huge way. This is a very soft division, and I think that as much as like there'll be probably question marks around some of their defense and some of their depth and all that kind of stuff, I just couldn't see another team that was stronger than them without question marks. Obviously Vancouver's missing Demko now. LA is I think gonna improve, but obviously they're going to be missing Doughty. They're going to be leaning on rookies quite a lot. I like the fact that they've been told that they can kind of open it up a little bit more and they won't be playing a 1-3-1. Apart from that, like of those teams, Edmonton is the one that I'm most confident in them putting up goals.
So with my 4, I'll start with LA. Especially if you ask LA fans, like the end of last season, they wanted it ripped to pieces. Because they were like, this build is not working the way it's supposed to work. And they didn't move a lot of the pieces that you would expect LA to decide to rip up and move. They just sort of bobbled along. And I know they're hoping, again, this is the year we all, that I think everyone hopes that Quentin Byfield takes the step that everyone thought he should have already taken. I think they're hoping that a lot of those rookies step up. I think the loss of Drew Doughty is not great. I think LA are safe in 4th on the back of, have you seen the rest of the division? It's not brilliant. I think the top 3, I think, are going to be Vegas, Vancouver, Edmonton. I'm interested with the fact.
Well, I mean, we agree exactly on those top 4. So, but what is it about Vegas that makes you put him above the rest?
A couple of things I think with Vegas. First of all, I think that they're actually going to get good goaltending, right? I think that if you take Samsonov, for example, out of Toronto, put him in a platoon situation in Vegas, I think you probably get a little bit. And again, it sounds stupid to go, the pressure of Toronto, but I think we've seen it. I think they do very weird.
I think Washington,
I know, but I think they do very weird. I think it does very weird things there. But secondly, I think he's got a better defense in front of him in Vegas than he did in Toronto.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think the Vegas defense is that weak. I also think Thomas Hertl having an off season with Vegas will be very good for Vegas and will be very good for Hertl. And I think once you incorporate the Hertl that we saw in San Jose, because he was never that when he got to Vegas, but he wasn't playing that style. Like Cassidy's going to have had some time now to work with Hertl and get him ingrained in the system a bit more. I think Hertl's going to be a brilliant asset for them. And genuinely, I think Jack Eichel is going to have a massive year.
My question mark is the players surrounding Jack Eichel. Currently, they've got him playing with Barbashev and Olofsson, which looks like a Buffalo top line with Jack Eichel. Which I'm not loving. Like if Mark Stone can be healthy, that's a huge difference. Obviously, they're missing Marchessault now. They're missing Riley Smith. They're missing a lot of those kind of wingers that were a big part of Vegas's success over the last few years. And I just don't know if they have the depth to fill that up.
So
It
So
might not matter. It
so
might not matter.
my counter with that is that what I see in the way that Vegas, and you know me, I love saying that Vegas rolls like an egg, and it still
Yeah.
sort of does. But what I see in this Vegas team is I see a Vegas team that is built for Pacific hockey. Like I see a Vegas team that is built the way Pacific teams are built. Now I know that you go, well, Edmonton are a Pacific team, and look at what they're doing. They're high flying and high shooting offense and blah 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 blah. But Dallas have sort of got a bit of that too about them as well. I think Vegas are just going to try to be that defensively assured. You can track meet us all you want. We're just going to not let you through. And you can run at us and run at us and run at us. And then all we need to do is get Eichel away. If they got Stone healthy, the better. I just look at Vegas and think that they are more defensively assured. I think that the other thing I think too is it's about those defensive matchups. And I said to you last year when we looked at the playoffs and, you know, what happened with Vegas last year at the end of last year, I think is one of the dumbest decisions I think I've ever seen a team make on the ice of going, no, we don't want to actually see Edmonton. Why don't we go and like, there was that weird thing where they were conceding goals at the end and going, oh, well, looks like we're not seeing Edmonton. I think that the worst thing that could have happened, I think Vegas needed Edmonton. I think Vegas were built to play Edmonton.
Yes.
And for me, I just think that Vegas are built to play the teams in this conference and this division. And so that's why I've got them at first, because I think Edmonton are built to play a bit of everyone. I think Vegas are built to play the Pacific.
Yeah, look, I think that they could be good. There's just some question marks around it for me. There's a lot of guys on that roster that I don't know what to expect from, and they could be really strong or they could be just okay. I think that regardless, they're a step above, you know, that next tier of like Calgary, Seattle, and they're obviously a big step, you know, above.
And obviously it wouldn't be me, but it goes without saying I don't trust Edmonton's defense and I don't trust Stuart Skinner in net. And I'm just going to make that absolutely plain again. I'm going to restate it for everyone who's like, oh, but look what they did. I still don't trust their defense and I still don't trust Stuart Skinner in net, and you can't convince me otherwise. So moving on. 72.1% think Edmonton are winning, followed by Vancouver, then Vegas, then LA, and then some bold individual who thinks Seattle. We never mentioned Seattle, which should probably tell you how far down. I nothing Seattle. I don't like them. I don't hate them. I nothing them. They exist.
Seattle are the Islanders. They're that watermark.
Yeah, except the Islanders are defensively assured a bit. Like they're solid. I don't even call Seattle solid.
Yeah, Seattle are probably a step below the Islanders in terms of solid. Yeah,
they're not solid. All right. So the most important bits of information now. All right. So, interestingly enough, we have some similarities in that we both have the same. So, we have the same general concept in the West in particular, but with different teams in the roles.
Yeah.
So, let's get to it. Conference final in the East. You've gone Devils Lightning. I've gone Devils Rangers. Now, for those people going, but that can't happen. Well, it can if you've got two wild cards coming out of the same conference, the same division.
Yeah.
And the whole reason I have 5 coming out of that is I want Devils Rangers in the conference final.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I think that would be a really fun,
and that's my counter. That's my counter, by the way, to the Shesterkin not getting the Vezina and the Rangers being in this regular season is Igor Shesterkin gets them there.
Yeah, well, like obviously, you know, I was high on the Rangers in terms of their finishing position and everything, but I in my mind of this playoff run, the wheels kind of came off at that point, and they didn't, they couldn't get past playoff teams, but yeah, I think I don't know. I'm not super confident about the team coming out of the Atlantic or that side of the bracket. The Devils are the team that I would pick out of the Metro, but I just don't like.
Well, that's why I don't have it.
The Atlantic. I couldn't bring myself to pick Toronto. I couldn't bring myself to pick Boston. I don't know. Probably the safe pick would have been Florida again.
But that's literally why.
Yeah, I wanted to be bold and went Tampa.
That's literally why I went bold and don't have one coming out of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Because I like Florida last year with the absolute class. I think the hangover thing is real. I genuinely do. I think they're going to have a bit of a rough time of it. I genuinely don't think Toronto will be any better in these playoffs. In fact, I think they might even be worse.
Yeah.
And Tampa, and I think they'll be decent. But again, I look at this and I go, the Rangers have the best goalie in the league, and I think that's probably going to carry them through mid teams that
quite possible, yeah.
And again, especially if the Rangers end up as a wild card having to play, if they end up playing a Florida that's down on shooting averages and not getting great goaltending, or if they end up then playing, and obviously if the Rangers end up seeing, if the Rangers end up seeing at some point in the playoffs the Leafs, Igor Shesterkin's going, great. The pucks are coming straight to me. The Devils, I think, will be very good, and I think the Devils will come out of there. Now, the West, we basically have, again, different teams,
I'm high
same
on Dallas,
role.
you're high on Nashville. I think we've got the same logic there.
Yeah.
Basically, this is the top of those divisions of our predictions.
Exactly.
I think for me, like, if I had to pick a playoff team that to win the cup, and I guess I just see like a similar kind of route for McDavid in terms of like Crosby's Penguins going to the cup in 2008 and losing to Detroit, and then coming back and winning in 2009. I feel like that's kind of the route for McDavid, being fueled by that loss in the cup final and coming back and winning it the next year. That's the narrative in my head.
I struggle with Oilers defense, and I struggle with their goaltending being as consistent. That's my question mark. It's not McDavid. It's not Draisaitl. We've seen what they can do. We know what they can do.
I've seen teams with worse defense
and
less stable goaltending win the cup.
For the record, my final is, we don't put down what our final is, but for the record, my final is Vegas versus the Rangers, and I can basically see it being a Rangers run like Lundqvist's run that ended with him basically trying to defeat the LA Kings on his own.
Entirely on his own.
I can see the exact same thing happening. Shesterkin is laying on the ice as the last goal goes in, maybe in a double overtime, having made something like 67 saves in a game. Yeah. And, he's just like, he's dead on the ice, and all the rest of the Rangers are up the other end going, what are you doing?
I picked Oilers over Tampa just because I couldn't in my head see the Devils being quite ready to make the cup final yet.
Yeah, I don't think the Devils will make the cup final, but I think that's their step, and I think that's again, I think Sheldon Keefe, I think will have a very good year there. I think he's built for it. Now, I don't put the predictions, our random predictions, on this thing because basically it's more fun to just talk them out without everyone seeing them. So in terms of what we have for our predictions, in our list, we put together 3. What we sort of think are going to be more outlandish, bold predictions. My favorite one remains the year that I said that Edmonton would miss the playoffs because McDavid would get hurt, and it happened. And obviously that was a great catch, and what a call that was. We've had some good ones. We've had some absolutely abysmal ones. I'm going to go first. Alexander Ovechkin catches Wayne Gretzky and then retires.
This year?
Yep.
How far off is he? He's like 60.
40.
Oh, okay. That's not so bad.
41. I think it's 41.
That could happen.
Yeah. I think the Capitals exist for one purpose.
Yes.
And it is to give Ovechkin the puck to score. And
How many years do you have left? I think he has 2,
right? I think he beats Gretzky this year and retires to go play in the K.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what does he have left next year, realistically, if he makes it?
I don't think he play. I think he wants to beat the record this year and go and play in the KHL.
I think he gets real close. I suspect that he gets over 30 this year. I don't know if he can do. I don't know if he can do the whole.
Who else is going to score?
Well,
genuinely.
I mean, no one for the first half of the year. He struggled until the end there.
But I think what they've done with recruitment and what they've done with setup and what they did in the second half of last year was work out how to get the puck to Ovechkin to score.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think that all they're going to do
has a little bit better help now for sure. Like
I think all they're going to do is do that. I don't think they're even going to try to win games necessarily. I think they're just going to get Ovechkin to score. That's all they want to do.
Very
all right.
much. Yeah.
Your first prediction.
All right. So, look, I think I've talked through some of these already realistically in the way that I've been kind of talking about some of the stuff. But let's talk about this because I think this leads into the one that you also picked. So Shesterkin carries New York in a contract year and is awarded the highest goalie contract to date. Before you put your number on it, my number on this in my head is about, I want to say it's just below 13. I'm going to say 12.8.
Okay, I had 12.5.
Yeah,
my second prediction.
Right.
My second prediction. I'll just do it while you got this here. Is that Igor gets? I've got him at 12.5 times 5.
Yeah, I mean that's probably right. I think it's maybe.
I don't think there's a doubt.
Longer,
I don't think there's a doubt he's over 12.
Yeah, I think it has to be over 12 realistically. Like for what he's
his agent has basically made it absolutely plain. They're not dipping under 12.
Yeah.
So
I mean, so obviously that covers one of yours. I will say, I actually just copied and pasted this one from last year because I'm still confident in it that the Penguins make it back to the playoffs this year, but only make it to the second round. I'm not confident in them actually, but I think that basically they're gonna make it back triumphantly, win a round, and that's kind of the the planting their flag.
Yeah, I've got them making it. As I said, I've got them making it as a second wild card. So and my third prediction. And this will explain a hell of a lot of my prediction. Peter DeBoer is fired before the trade deadline. What I'm thinking is, I think Dallas start badly. I think they start badly. I think they're in a bit of a slump. I think they're trying to work out how to get out of the slump. I think they fire Peter DeBoer and bring someone else in, and the team suddenly goes on an absolute charge. But I think that DeBoer is probably going to wear. I think over the course of this season, I think he's definitely going to wear out his welcome. If they don't win the cup, I think he's possibly gone anyway. But I think that DeBoer hockey has a shelf life, and he doesn't tend to last past this point with organizations. And like his last San Jose team was really good, really good, really good, really good. Suddenly stunk, absolute cutoff, and it was just a bang. Automatically, that was it. And I just think I like what they've done with some of their youth players. I also don't think they've necessarily that those players suit DeBoer hockey. And I don't think it's going to get the best out of those players. And I genuinely think that Dallas is already looking around and thinking who's next in terms of we want someone to work with the young talent. They might have to move that up a bit if Dallas has
look, he wouldn't be my pick for sure. All right, so my final one is that Thatcher Demko is back and playing by mid-season, but is never quite the same again and loses the starter role. So I don't know that there's an obvious successor ready to go, but I think that with the lead time that Lankinen and Silovs get, it might just end up being a tandem if he's never quite gets back to that level. It's a tough. I hope that's not the end of his career or anything, but it doesn't sound good.
I agree, to be honest with you. I'm worried about Thatcher Demko. I'm incredible. Nothing that comes out of that sounds good. No. So, and that's going to do it. So there are our predictions. We'll put them all back up sort of after the podcast a little bit, but that's going to do us. Thank you everyone for listening. It's a nice long one. Thank you everyone for viewing. If you like it all, please share it. Please tell everyone. Please comment. Do all the things. We really appreciate all your support, and we'll catch you all later.
Thanks, guys.